There is a moment in almost every relationship that nobody talks about. A quiet shift that happens without warning. First, they couldn't get enough of you. Messages came instantly. Conversations lasted for hours. Your presence felt exciting, almost magnetic. You didn't have to try too hard. Attention flowed naturally. You felt chosen, desired, important. And then, slowly, something changed. Replies became shorter. The curiosity faded. The effort reduced. The same person who once chased you now seemed emotionally distant, almost familiar in a way that felt strangely cold. And the most painful part is not rejection itself, but confusion, because nothing dramatic happened. No big fight, no clear reason, just a slow disappearance of interest. Most people spend years blaming themselves for this moment. They think they were not attractive enough, not interesting enough, not lovable enough. But the truth is far more uncomfortable and far more psychological. People rarely lose interest because you became worse. They lose interest because the psychological experience of you changed. Human attraction is not built on possession. It is built on anticipation. And the moment anticipation dies, the brain quietly begins searching for stimulation elsewhere, even when nothing is technically wrong. To understand this, you have to stop looking at love as emotion and start looking at it as biology, perception, and subconscious reward systems. Because attraction is not a promise. It is a process, and processes change once the goal feels achieved. The human brain is not designed to stay excited by certainty. It is designed to chase resolution. Every time someone moves closer to getting you, their brain releases dopamine, the chemical of pursuit, curiosity, and motivation. Dopamine does not reward having something. It rewards moving towards something. This is why the early phase feels electric. You are partially unknown, partially unpredictable, partially out of reach. Your personality becomes a puzzle their brain wants to solve. Every message feels like progress. Every interaction feels like discovery. And discovery is addictive. But once emotional certainty appears, the brain stops chasing. Not consciously, not intentionally, automatically. Because from a neurological perspective, the reward has already been collected. And this is where most relationships silently transform. People believe love should grow stronger after commitment, but attraction and comfort follow different psychological rules. Comfort seeks stability. Attraction feeds on tension. When tension disappears completely, desire often fades with it. This does not mean people are fake. It means human psychology is honest in ways emotions are not. When someone finally feels they fully have you, when your attention becomes guaranteed, your availability predictable, your reaction certain, the mystery collapses. And without mystery, curiosity struggles to survive. You didn't change, but the emotional challenge did. And challenge is one of the most misunderstood forces behind attraction. Humans value what feels earned, not because they are cruel, but because effort creates emotional investment. The more energy someone spends trying to understand you, impress you, or win your attention, the more their brain justifies your importance. Psychologists call this effort justification. The mind convinces itself, if I worked this hard for them, they must be valuable. But when effort disappears, valuation quietly decreases. This is why people sometimes lose interest right after finally getting into a relationship they chased for months. The pursuit ends, and with it, the psychological engine that kept attraction alive. And here lies the painful paradox. The very behaviors people believe will secure love, constant availability, excessive reassurance, removing all uncertainty, are often the same behaviors that slowly remove attraction. Because certainty comforts the heart, but rarely excites the mind. Attraction lives in emotional movement, in discovery, in the feeling that there is still more to learn, more to experience, more to earn. When someone feels they have fully mapped you, fully predicted you, fully secured you, their brain unconsciously shifts from exploration mode to maintenance mode. And maintenance is calm, but calm is rarely thrilling. This is why relationships don't usually end with explosions. They fade, slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, and most people never realize that what disappeared was not love, but psychological tension, the invisible force that once made every interaction feel alive. But this is only the surface layer, because losing interest is not only about novelty or mystery. It is also deeply connected to identity, self-perception, attachment wounds, and the hidden fear humans carry about emotional safety itself. Sometimes people lose interest not because they stopped liking you, but because getting close activated parts of themselves they were never ready to face. And to understand that, we have to go deeper into how the human mind reacts when attraction turns into emotional reality. Because strangely, many people are comfortable chasing love, but terrified of keeping it. And what most people never realize is that attraction does not disappear suddenly. It reorganizes itself beneath awareness. When someone is chasing you, their brain is operating in what psychologists call a reward-seeking state. Every interaction carries uncertainty. Will they reply? Do they like me? Am I important to them? That uncertainty creates emotional tension, and tension activates dopamine pathways inside the brain. Dopamine is often misunderstood as the chemical of pleasure. It is not. It is the chemical of pursuit. It rises not when we possess something, but when we anticipate gaining it. This is why the early phase of connection feels almost addictive. Your presence becomes associated with possibility. Their mind fills gaps with imagination. And imagination always creates a more powerful emotional experience than reality ever can. You are not just a person during attraction. You are an idea, an unfinished story their brain wants to complete. But once the story feels finished, dopamine naturally declines. Not because you became less valuable, but because the brain completed its prediction cycle. The unknown became known. The chase became certainty. And certainty, while emotionally safe, produces less neurological stimulation. This is where many people make their first painful misunderstanding. They assume fading excitement means fading feelings. But excitement and attachment are different systems. Excitement is driven by novelty and uncertainty. Attachment is driven by safety and familiarity. And the human brain struggles to experience both at maximum intensity at the same time. So when relationships transition from excitement to attachment, one partner often interprets emotional calmness as loss of attraction, while the other unconsciously searches for stimulation again. Not because they want someone else, but because their nervous system remembers the feeling of pursuit. This is why people sometimes become distant right after things become stable. Stability removes emotional friction, and friction, paradoxically, is what once created emotional heat. Think about the beginning again. You didn't reveal everything immediately. You had your own life, your own rhythm, your own boundaries. They were discovering you piece by piece. Discovery activates curiosity. Curiosity sustains attention. But once someone feels they fully understand your patterns, when every response becomes predictable, the brain stops allocating the same level of focus. Attention naturally moves toward novelty, not out of betrayal, but out of biological design. Humans are prediction machines. We are constantly scanning for new emotional information. When nothing new appears, emotional engagement decreases automatically. This is why overavailability often kills attraction faster than rejection ever could. Rejection creates uncertainty. Uncertainty creates thought. Thought creates emotional investment. But guaranteed availability removes mental engagement. The brain stops wondering about you. And what the brain stops wondering about, it slowly stops desiring. This does not mean playing games. It means maintaining psychological individuality. Because attraction survives when two people remain slightly unknowable to each other. Not through secrecy, but through continuous personal growth. When someone stops evolving emotionally, intellectually, or socially within a relationship, they unintentionally freeze the dynamic. Familiarity becomes stagnation, and stagnation feels like emotional silence. But dopamine is only one layer. Beneath it lies something far deeper, attachment patterns formed long before you ever met. Every person carries an unconscious blueprint of love created during childhood. Some learned that closeness equals safety. Others learned that closeness equals pressure, expectation, or loss of independence. So when attraction exists at a distance, avoidant individuals feel comfortable. They can desire without vulnerability. They can imagine connection without fully surrendering control. But once they finally get you, once emotional closeness becomes real, their nervous system detects danger. Not real danger, emotional exposure. Suddenly, intimacy feels overwhelming. Expectations feel heavy. The relationship stops being fantasy and becomes responsibility. And responsibility activates fear. This is why some people chase intensely, only to withdraw once they succeed. They were addicted to longing, not prepared for closeness. Their interest fades not because you lost value, but because intimacy forces them to confront emotional parts of themselves they learned to avoid. They may not even understand why they feel distant. They just feel restless. And restlessness often disguises itself as lost attraction. Meanwhile, the partner who stayed emotionally consistent becomes confused. They give more effort, more reassurance, more availability, believing love requires proving devotion. But increased effort sometimes accelerates the distance. Because when one person moves closer while the other feels overwhelmed, psychological polarity collapses. The dynamic shifts from mutual curiosity to emotional imbalance. One begins chasing reassurance. The other begins seeking space. And attraction quietly suffocates between these two opposing movements. This is the emotional safety paradox. Humans crave connection, but fear losing autonomy. We want to be loved deeply, yet we also want to feel free. When a relationship unconsciously feels like emotional confinement, even if the partner did nothing wrong, the brain creates distance as a form of self-protection. And distance feels like lost interest, but underneath it is often fear of emotional engulfment. The tragedy is that both people usually misunderstand what is happening. One believes they stopped caring. The other feels, I don't know why I feel pressured. Neither realizes they are reacting to unconscious psychological wiring. And this is why logic rarely fixes attraction problems. Because attraction lives below logic. It lives inside perception, inside emotional tension, inside the delicate balance between closeness and individuality. When that balance breaks, interest doesn't vanish overnight. It slowly dissolves, like sound fading into silence. But the deepest reason people lose interest after getting you has nothing to do with dopamine or attachment alone. It has to do with value, not your real value, but perceived value inside the human mind. Because strangely, the moment you start proving your worth too much, the brain begins questioning it. And this is where the psychology becomes even darker. And maybe the hardest truth to accept is that losing someone's interest does not always mean you lost your worth. Sometimes it simply means the illusion ended, because attraction often begins in imagination, but relationships live in reality. And reality asks something deeper from people: presence, responsibility, emotional maturity. Not everyone who desires you is prepared to truly meet you. Many people fall in love with how you make them feel during pursuit, not with the depth required to stay once comfort arrives. And when the excitement fades, they assume something is missing. But what is missing is not you. It is the version of themselves that only existed during the chase. The version that felt alive while wanting something just out of reach. So they search again, not always for a new person, but for a new feeling. And if you don't understand this, you begin shrinking yourself. You start believing you must become more available, more agreeable, more perfect, hoping consistency will restore desire. But attraction was never created by perfection. It was created by aliveness, by individuality, by emotional self-respect, by a life that existed beyond someone else's attention. The moment you abandon your center to keep someone interested, you unknowingly remove the very quality that attracted them in the first place. Because people are not drawn to neediness. They are drawn to emotional gravity, to someone who chooses connection, not someone who depends on it for identity. And this is the quiet lesson hidden behind almost every story of fading interest. You are not meant to be endlessly chased, and you are not meant to endlessly chase either. Healthy attraction survives when two complete individuals meet, not when one person slowly disappears trying to hold the other closer. So if someone loses interest after getting you, do not immediately ask, "What is wrong with me?" Ask a deeper question. Did they want connection, or did they want pursuit? Because those are not the same thing. Some people only know how to love possibility. You know how to love presence. And your value was never meant to depend on someone's ability to stay curious about you. Real connection does not come from maintaining mystery through fear or manipulation. It comes from continuous growth, from remaining a person who evolves, explores, learns, and expands even within love. When you keep growing, you never become fully predictable, not because you hide yourself, but because you are alive. And aliveness cannot be possessed, can only be experienced. So the next time someone's interest fades, don't rush to chase their attention back. Sometimes distance is not rejection, it is revelation. A revelation of who was emotionally ready and who was only passing through a phase of desire. And strangely, the moment you stop trying to be endlessly interesting to others, you become deeply interesting again. Because peace replaces performance. Self-respect replaces anxiety. And attraction, when it returns, comes from authenticity, not effort. Remember this. The right people don't stay interested because you remained mysterious. They stay because discovering you never truly ends, because you never stopped discovering yourself. And maybe the real goal was never to keep everyone interested, but to become someone whose presence does not depend on being chased to feel valuable. If this reflection made you see relationships differently, if it helped you understand something you once blamed yourself for, then take a moment to pause, because awareness changes how you move through every connection that follows. And if you want to explore more of the hidden psychology behind attraction, power, and human behavior, subscribe to Voxlore Audio, because sometimes the most important truths are the ones nobody teaches us, until experience forces us to learn them.